Sunday Live here with myself, Caleb, and our co-host Joe Price is online. Stefan Aronsen is our guest this week. He is an organizer, promoter, and disc jockey.
Indeed.
And I'm going to bring him on right now.
Thanks, Stefan here.
So, Stefan, thank you for jumping in on this week's episode on short notice.
Yeah, no problem.
So, Stefan, you are the founder of
Balanced Breakfast. I like to say co-founder, I think it leaves room for the other people that are involved to feel like, oh man, he's showboating. He's putting himself front and center. And I go, no, this is not possible without the people that were at the first meeting, without Andy Freeman, who was bouncing ideas off of me, and all the leaders that were like, why doesn't this exist in my city? And I'm like, well, let's do it. So I really like the idea of being a co-founder, even if it's I kind of run with it with all my ideas of how community should be created. But yeah, the gist is Balanced Breakfast is trying to bring people in the music industry together. We're trying to help you meet your next friend, best friend, your band member, someone to be a housemate with, or someone to talk to when you're stuck in quarantine, perhaps. So we went from meeting in person to meeting online, which was a huge change. And yeah, we're just trying to facilitate being social in an industry that can sometimes feel really antisocial and secluded. That's my gist.
Not to mention competitive.
Yeah, super competitive.
Yeah, I noticed that coming up to Seattle outside of San Francisco, that the competitiveness was taken to a whole nother level. San Francisco seems more like, people, friends getting together to have a good time, play some shows. But when I got up to Seattle, it was like, what scene are you in? What bands are you in? Don't dare book. Don't get booked instead of me. It was a lot more competitive.
I mean, definitely. I think. I think I've seen the effect of Balanced Breakfast on the San Francisco scene in that people talk more, people make friendships, people feel like there's accountability for helping those that are new to the scene come up the ladder. And I would like to think that Balanced Breakfast played a role in that, and that that we set the tone for how to communicate and how to do it in a friendly way.
Well, I came in, I didn't have any community other than a few friends I was doing music projects with, and we occasionally do some shows, neck of the woods, and around the Bay Area. And when I got your message to join a rock lotto band, it opened up my whole world. Yeah, it gave me instantly a community in San Francisco and Oakland and San Jose. And suddenly I'm playing live shows with people and rehearsing with different bands. It really was night and day.
That's awesome. That's the goal, is that I originally thought that the music scene was this secret club and everybody was hanging out, and the friendships were being formed in the back green room, and all these musicians were talking, and I was missing the conversations, and I was feeling left out. And as I've gotten deeper into the music industry, I've discovered that more often the green room is just a place to drop your guitar, drop your bags, and there's not a lot of bands hanging out and talking back there. So that's hopefully what Breakfast is doing, is hey, come get a cup of coffee, get a pastry, sit across from someone and be like, hey, what's your story?
And I like that really structure. Danny and Ronan up here in Seattle let me merge the Balanced Breakfast Seattle, which had died off, into one event. And we started doing these live events. They were getting traction, and people were coming and starting to share ideas. And I remember we had you as a guest, and rather than someone on stage talking and everybody listening, and then little groups, you put everybody in a circle, and everybody shared, and everybody listened, and you could just feel a complete different shift in mood.
I like giving other people the spotlight. I like the opportunity to say, hey, welcome. I'm so excited you're here. Okay, now the spotlight's on you, and let's talk about what you're doing. And that gets me all pumped up. And then when it's someone's first time, I always like it when people cheer and are like, "Yeah, first time, yeah." It's it's more exciting that way.
Yeah. And I've worked on videos, songs, played live shows, all because of conversations that had happened at Balanced Breakfasts, where someone said, "This is what I'm about." I'm like, "Hey, I've been looking for you."
Yeah. Yeah, it is so much easier in the video chat to when I put it in the grid view and I see people start getting excited, I see people smiling, and I see people be like, oh, I want to be connected to that person that just talked. Oh, and then chats show up on the right side and they're like, hey, afterwards, like hit me up because I want to talk about what you just said. That's fun. It happens in person, but usually it's like slightly delayed because everybody knows, oh, I can get them after we drink coffee and have some pastries. I can catch them again. I'll get them. I'll get them later.
I've had that happen with podcasts such as this one.
Yeah, the podcasting is. I mean, it's interesting how podcasting is changing as well. The idea that like, all right, well now again we can't gather, so people are hopefully looking for new ways to connect, and podcasting definitely is a way to connect.
How many years has it been?
Um, so November of 2013 is when Andy and I first had a meeting, and we were 5 people. And what the gist of what happened is that originally he saw me on Twitter and was like, "Hey, let's get together and have a meal." And so our schedules were really complicated, so the only time that worked was early. And he had a lot of ideas for grandiose things that freaked me out because everybody is saying the music industry is dying. And so I was like, well, this was fun. Let's do it again. And so the first meeting had 5 people, and we did it again, had 7 people, did it again, had 10 people. Pretty soon we outgrew the little table that I first saw us like occupying for months or years. And then we're suddenly like taking over like an entire cafe, and it's just like, oh, this is a thing.
You said, "Oh, this is a thing." Were you not ready for that success?
I guess the when we started doing the meetings, it didn't have a name, so it wasn't like something where we said, let's start something, we're going to call it Balanced Breakfast, it's going to bring people together, it's going to be in multiple cities, and it's going to make people feel like they're connected. No, we were like, hey, what if you call your friends and I'll call my friends, and we see who wants to come have $5.55 breakfast on Thursday morning, because it was like a special they were doing.
Got it.
That was about as far as we got. We were like, that's an amazing deal. And then eventually went up to $7.77, and now it's kind of expensive.
I love that the timeline of Balanced Breakfast's organization is based on the price of the breakfast, and that's sort of an interesting metaphor for not only Balanced Breakfast as a breakfast, but as an experience. Is it started off as this group of people getting together, talking about music and whatnot. So it went from a conversation and meeting group where folks are getting together initially for breakfast, and then these larger and larger gatherings. But eventually, then it branched out into live shows. What was that transition like?
Yeah. The live shows kind of got triggered from us talking and saying, well, we've been meeting for a little while. We've been talking about how the music industry should be. We've been talking about ways that we can better approach the music industry. And kind of two things happened around the same time. We were like, well, let's put that to practice. Well, let's check out this thing called South by Southwest. Maybe we can do a residency to raise money to go to South by Southwest. So it was like a double whammy. So so it was pretty wild that like a bunch of people who hadn't played together were like all pumped up about the idea of like organizing shows where they got to play. Kind of showed how important shows are in the community.
because you not only built up these individual meetings city by city, now you have these global chat sessions where different cities are talking to each other. Then Rock Lotto happened, and that's how I first got involved. And then
Yeah.
you started having Balanced Breakfast, which was a series of live venues over several days. Then you start having the Balanced Breakfast Conference over
Yeah.
2 days. We've done two of those. That's a lot of different things.
It was basically like we had the breakfast, and that was cool. And what was happening was people would come for a certain time, and then they'd be like, all right, well, these conversations were great, I've learned a lot, um but what else is there? So people would start getting antsy and be like, okay, well, what happens now? So I was like, okay, well, what does happen now? So that was the well, that was kind of like after we had done meetings and after we had done shows and after we had introduced evening meetings, because people are like, 8 a.m., that's so early. So we started doing 8 p.m. as well. um, and then I was like, okay, I think we need a music summit. And that's scary because that's a heck of a lot of money up front to do something like that. And it went well, and I said, okay, I guess we're doing that again. But I still felt like people were like, what now? So then we did the Balance Breakfast, and we did 7 venues, and that went well, though it was absolute pure chaos. Absolute pure chaos. That's changed a little bit because we changed it to be one venue after doing 7 venues, which you would think you'd go the other way around, but I think we started crazy and then went back to a little bit of sanity. um, so we're just trying to figure out new ways to build on that, like new ways to grow, new ways to give opportunities. And um, yeah, and I guess you could also throw in the fact that we tried to create an app with the idea that we're started in San Francisco, so Silicon Valley. So Balanced Breakfast should have an app. And for anybody who's out there thinking about building an app, it's expensive, it's time consuming, and then you put it out in the ether for people to partake in, and you think, oh, it'll be perfect, and then Facebook updates something, Instagram updates something, Apple updates something, Google updates something, and you're like, but I spent all my money on the app already, and you want more money to fix it. And it broke, and it broke, and it broke. So we put a little brakes on that, a little pause. So if you're going to make an app, make sure you've got the money to make the app and then the money to support the fixing of the app.
Man,
We
I
did
hear you.
not.
I'd say every week, all the work I'm doing with bands and with friends with software companies, it is a never-ending steeplechase um, of trying to fix things and keeping things current
Yeah.
when something's tied to another thing.
And it's like, it's so exciting for what could exist. And then it does exist for a period of time, and you like cradle your baby and you're like, you're so pretty. And then it breaks and you go, I hate you. And then you take money out of your pocket and you're like, this is my last one. I'm running out here. So
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I hear you there. It is tricky, and I know Danny Schwartz, who was a part of the behind the scene balanced breakfast scene up here in Seattle before COVID-19 hit and changed everything. He's working on an app called Showground, and him and some buddies, and it's pretty intense. And they've been working on it for years, and they're just doing it for the Seattle area. And then as the platform builds, they're going to move to other areas. And of course, no one's playing live, so it's kind of like you built this app for this thing. You thought, no way is music not going to happen live ever.
yeah, it's hard to decide what to develop for. Do you develop for being stuck in your house and being asked not to hug people, or do you develop for your goal of hanging out in large groups and being in a mosh pit? I don't know. I don't know.
Now, Stefan talked about how Balanced Breakfast went from meeting for breakfast, large gatherings, into the Rock Lotto performances, into a festival, into a conference. But his adventure wasn't over with that.
Yeah, so I think this would have been our okay, 1, 2, 3. I think this would have been our fifth South by Southwest. It gets a little bit blurry sometimes, but I believe this would have been our fifth, and it was super organized, and um, we had sponsors, and we had it all lined up, and we had 2 venues, and we had six days, five of them being performance days, and one of them being a meetup day. So it was the biggest South by Southwest West that we were going to do. And so I bought a plane ticket from San Francisco to Portland, Portland to New York, New York to Austin, Austin to Bogota, and then Bogota back to San Francisco. And it was gonna be a 3-month adventure, like hitting up all the breakfast cities that needed like a little like uh, I don't know, like just to get like hurrah, like let's do this. So like let's meet in Portland, let's meet in Seattle, let's start one in New York, let's meet in Austin. And I made it to Portland, and things are getting a little like, what's going on here? Something's weird. There's this COVID thing, like it might be ending things. And while I was in Portland, the official South by Southwest got canceled, and I was like, okay, well, that's a super bummer, but okay, we still got this. We still have our venue, so it'll be fine. So I flew from Portland to New York, and then unofficial venues started being like, this isn't a good idea. And I was like, I think we're good. I think we're good. And all of a sudden it was like that realization that that I had to make an organization choice, not just a Stefan choice of like, I want to be at a show. I want to like hang out with people. I want to like do something rock and roll. And I was like, thinking as an organization, okay, well, we have to be accountable for people's health. We have to be accountable for choices made for like the possibility of like getting someone sick or spreading the coronavirus. And so I was like, I had to call both venues and say, this isn't happening. Call, like, message all the bands, and we had 60 plus bands scheduled. I say, this isn't happening. And hard. That was like those adult choices you don't want to make. I rescheduled my plans and changed my trip from going to Austin to go to South America, and then the border of South America closed, and so I was like, okay, I'm gonna be here a little longer than I had planned to be. And then suddenly 3 months later, I'd been stuck in New York for 3 months because you're not supposed to travel, not supposed to go places. Yeah, that was not how I saw the last 3 months going.
I could imagine. I mean, that's intense. You've done like years have led up to that moment, and that planning and those connections and whatnot, and all of a sudden you're just watching doors close one after another.
Yeah, yeah, that was hard when I came back from New York. And the idea is you're supposed to quarantine for a certain amount of time or try to like avoid certain people for a certain amount of time. I went to my brothers before I went to my parents, and then I was like, I had all these rules for my parents. I was like, okay, so I'm going to be staying with you, but I want you to be healthy. And I tried to enforce those, but they were like, no, you're in our house now, we want hugs, we haven't seen you in 3 months. So they quickly brought me into their circle and were like, okay, now you're in our circle, so it's like, that's it.
The 2 week timer is started. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah,
The good news is probability is towards you. If you're coming amongst family groups and whatnot, the probability is low. It's just that if it happens, it's a tragedy. So it's a real
yeah,
tough call to make.
yeah. I accomplished a full week of like after travel. I stayed away from my parents for a full week, and I was gonna try to like stay away longer, but they were just like, no, we don't, we want you here. And I was like, it's hard to argue when they're like, no, here now,
Right. And well, at
give us a
least
hug.
at least they get to make the decision, right? They get to make the call,
Yeah,
and therefore
yeah,
everybody has an agreement.
yep.
And
Just
I
trying to be
just
a
showed
responsible son.
I just showed a picture of you on the plane. What was that like?
What was it like being on a plane?
Yeah, I showed a picture of you.
So I had a nonstop flight from New York to Portland because I really didn't want to do a layover. I wanted any time spent in an airplane to be one airplane. But the night before my flight, they canceled my flight and put me on a connecting flight through Seattle. And I will say the things that were weird. The JFK was absolutely empty. There was nobody in JFK. It was deserted. And most of the businesses are closed. I think there was one cafe that was open, maybe a bookstore. Nobody's hanging out. And then they boarded the plane the way I feel like they should always board the plane, from the back to the front, which I was like, I love that there's no priority, like, of like when you checked in, what your level is as far as being an airline member. It's just like, if you're sitting in the back, you should go in first so that we don't have to pass you when we go in. Pretty smart. Um, and then they didn't sell any middle seats, so the flight was sold out, but with aisle and window seats, so there was at least a seat's distance between me and the other person. And then when I got to Seattle, connected onto a smaller plane with propellers, and they did something very similar. It was, I believe it was two, I think, yeah, it was two seats on either side, and they didn't put anybody in the second seat. So basically everybody was in a window seat. And then arriving in Portland, Portland was absolutely dead. There was nobody along the curb to be picked up. There was no cars lined up to try to get a parking spot next to the curb. And there were no police officers like telling cars to move along because there were no cars. It was different.
Wow.
Yeah, but it was clean.
I can imagine. But yeah, it's still trippy, still very strange. I know here that we go walking through the hills, and the traffic is picked up, and you see more and more people walking their dogs and whatnot. But for a while there, it was we didn't see anybody. Everybody's really good about, if someone's coming your way, you cross the street, or you go out into the bike lane and come back in, and everybody says hi and whatnot. So far here, everybody seems pretty accepting of the situation. But to go out to airports and travel and just see, all the terminals abandoned, must be really strange.
But I will say that the mask culture in New York is much different than the mask culture in the Northwest. When I was in Brooklyn, if you left your house, you put on your mask, and when you were walking around the neighborhood, you had your mask on, and anytime you were just being, your mask was on. And I feel like here, I feel like the culture is, anytime you walk into a store, there's an 80 to 85% chance that you're wearing a mask, but not 100%. And that was kind of shocking to me at first. I walked into a 7-Eleven in Portland, and I was the only one with a mask on, and I was like, what is going on here? Like, I get that you could be in your car without a mask. I get that you could be walking around outside without a mask, but I just thought it was a given. Anytime you walked into a store, you'd have a mask, and they're just like, oh no, I'm getting a Slurpee.
Yeah, it is interesting. I'm sure across the country you're getting a range of this. And as the resurgence of phase one is hitting now, people are rethinking the behavior. It seems like a lot of the time, and we invested for 3 months to dip this down, within a couple weeks got an opposition, and that opposition has played out. So there's now a new resurgence, but that's not even counting when the fall comes and that peak.
We've got to get it together as a society. Otherwise, we're going to lose something or here. We got to be careful not to lose that.
I'd say we already have lost, because we've talked a bit about the impact of this COVID-19 pandemic and how it shut down balanced breakfast, doing live venues. All the live venues have shut down, and we're not sure as a society if we're handling it in a way that we're going to get out the other end faster or slower. It looks like slower. What do we do until then?
Too many clubs have shut down permanently.
Yeah. I guess the hard thing in that is that if you flash back to January, I was pretty pumped because I had a lot of clients in the entertainment realm, and I was like, yes, I've got clients, and like they're all in the right industries, they're exactly where I want to be and doing what I want to be doing. It's like a mixture of like restaurant, hotel, gym, that kind of stuff, and bands. And then as soon as this hit, and you're suddenly like, eliminate like all of the entertainment. So like, oh, oh crap! Like I had all of my eggs in one basket. I had everything like collected together in one industry, and I was just like, this is not good. And then yeah, like Joe was saying, venues closed for a little while, but after 3 months, venues are like, well, we can't exist anymore. And then with the threat of another 3 months and possibly the rest of the year, it's like, how do you sustain rent? How do you sustain like being in a community that can't come out and partake in you? It's tricky. The it's going to be a different industry when we do get back to whatever the new norm is, and what will it look like, and we like how long will it take us to be like, oh, I like this new norm, or I know how to thrive in this new norm. It's not good. It's going to be different.
And you and I have talked a bit about this because I'm an introvert, so I'm perfectly happy to be here in the studio on a computer doing my thing and interacting socially through Zoom and streaming and whatnot. But for folks that they're extroverts, they got to get out. You know, they're going out to coffee, meeting people, hanging out, socially networking, performing live every day. This has to be a complete and utter disruption of their lives.
I was going to like one show a week, and if I was stressed out, I would try to think of another show I could go to. And if I was feeling a lack of creativity, I'd think of some sort of networking event or way to hang out with lots of people, whether it be dancing or a show. So I might say that I was going to one show a week, but realistically, I probably was going to 2 or 3 shows a week, and every day was a social day. And so this is absolute pure torture for me. That like every one of my habits has changed.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's like if my inspiration is hanging out at events with people, and then I feel creative. Where do I find that creativity from now?
It's funny that you should mention that. 'Cause while we're all talking here, I'm thinking something down the line will pop up or be formulated as a new invention of sorts that will give us a venue or a medium with which to go on with our musical expression, musical following, musical creativity and production. Um, and one way is what we're doing right now. What we're doing here, the being online like this, in a way, it's like a bunker. It's our bomb shell. It's our bunker. But at the same time, this is our wellspring in a sense. Doing here, and it's full circle because we used to do this in the '90s with the burgeoning of BBS chat rooms, and music started getting passed around in an underground sense. And then it became with the venues, with venues and broadcast radio and then streaming for to live, say in San Francisco. Then they moved to Oakland, and this artistic migratory pattern from SF to Oakland, and then Oakland to Vallejo, or even up north. Um, but something even bigger than the gentrification problem, this pandemic has really got us, underground. So, but at the same time, we coming here because a place online, the online presence has been very reliable, and it may not be the end all be all, but it's a good starting place. It was in the '90s, and it is yet again. It's like we've come full circle. The next step in our creativity is how to thrive without necessarily having a venue, unless it's online.
And this show was born because Stefan very quickly recognized this and created an online festival for Balanced Breakfast. And I slated myself and a couple other acts up here in Seattle to perform. And after that performance, the friend called me up who remains unknown, unnamed. There'll be a mystery guest in the future. They called me up and said, "Hey, I liked what you did for the balanced breakfast thing. Could you do that on a weekly basis and show off different parts of your work, people that you're working with?" And that's how this got born. So, Stefan, really, this show wouldn't exist if you hadn't done that.
Cool. Yeah. The thing about online is it's like it is a nice way to discover music, but it's a really bummer way to like um it's really hard to touch people. It's really hard to like um feel that intimacy of like a hug or a handshake or like sharing a space with someone. The energy, I don't know, I'm an empath, so when am in a room with someone, like I can feel what they're thinking, how they're feeling, and this just cuts it off for me. I feel
Mm.
I like it, but I don't come away from this feeling rejuvenated. I come away from this feeling absolutely exhausted, and it's like I like it. I like this because it helps educate people. It helps those that feel connected through video to feel like, oh, that was cool. I spent the last hour like listening to them talk and feeling like I was doing something. But for me, I walk away from it going, okay, I need to like chill for a second because that took a lot of work.
Mm.
It's different.
It,
Yeah.
it
So,
does. It does. And in a way, I said earlier, we've come full circle, but at the same time, something like this is more like a new beginning of sorts. And it's a new beginning that people may poo-poo because it's not as intimate or as jovial as say a live performance, a concert or a club full of people and the club, band interaction. I get all that, and that these are luxuries that we are missing now. But at the same
Yeah.
time, this venue of online, as I call it, being a new beginning, people from the film industry were threatened by and ridiculed television and so forth. And then and then streaming television and cable, and then now we have this. And so there's always the stragglers. Well, it wasn't like before, and it might not be like before, but it tests our creativity and it tests our imagination to come up with better things. And the
now,
final thing, unlike television, this is two-way communication. You see here, you'll have you'll have a you know virtual concerts, yes, but then you'll have things like us where we could discuss.
I guess watching people kiss online isn't as much fun as kissing. So
yeah, that's where I was kind of going with it. I think you make a great argument there, Joe. But for what I heard in what Stefan was saying was that there's this, the just touching of a human being. Um, I know in the late 80s, we were magazines like Mono 2000 were all talking about online love and all this sort of virtual this and virtual that. And here we are in 2020. And there are a few people I know that hang out on virtual worlds and whatnot. Second Life in the 2000s and the Oculus stuff now. But the bottom line is physicality is physicality.
yeah.
And
I think there are two things that are going to happen. These online shows are going to become like expected. Like even if you're doing live, I think in person there's going to be a little bit more expectation for video for those people that want to stay at home. And I think there's going to be an increased importance of your small in-person social circle, like those 7 or those 5 that are like your core circle are going to become that much more important, because when you're reducing your circle, your reach, and saying like, oh, no more gathering in large groups, so you'll be like, okay, well, who's part of my pod? Who's part of my small circle of like, these are the people that I can touch, and those people are going to be that much more important, or those relationships are going to be that much more important.
how much do you see this as a permanent shift in the culture? As soon as, I'm just waiting for the vaccine, right?
I guess I I, it's hard to say like what's going to happen. I definitely am not approaching this from the standpoint of waiting for that vaccine. I'm trying to live in the moment of like, what can I do socially right now?
Yes.
Also trying to be like, this is going to be normal for longer than I'm comfortable with, and trying to follow like what seems like sane advice, and like approaching it like as things open, if it seems appropriate, like partaking in a way that feels responsible, and also hoping that like certain key things start opening up that financially support the things I do, but also like not too fast and not too wild and not too uh, rodeo or a Wild West kind of style.
Yeah, it's that the making sure things are done in a way that there isn't the backlash that makes the situation worse
Yeah,
or sustained longer.
nice light topic.
Yeah, we went a little further in this that I originally thought when I was planning the show, I thought we'd just more talk about how online stuff has picked up pace and it's become more popular, and how Balanced Breakfast is doing a fantastic job with all their online chat meetings in the cities and globally. And you've been putting together online festivals, and online festivals have just exploded where they're happening every 5 minutes. But we kind of got into the personal, but that's okay. It's okay.
Yeah. I will say
And-
our next thing we are approaching is we are exploring the idea of creating a new online community that will give people a place to connect via a Balanced Breakfast platform that will have a lot of the things that we offer in person in a digital platform. So that's the next thing that's coming, and trying to figure out what people expect in their online communities, what people want, what people consider a useful resource, and if they'll pay for it.
all these opportunities online help, but I agree with Stefan, they're not the same. We're coming to the end of our show this week. So I'm going to do, after we do the credits, I'm going to throw on the after party screen and do a improvised song. This was something that I wrote a couple years ago, and it seems appropriate. I haven't worked out the vocals. It's going to be totally slipshod, but hey, you asked for live performance, you're going to get live performance.
Get it.
I have 3 different band projects: Kalib, Audio Terrace, Queer Blue, available on Bandcamp and YouTube. Got lots of videos and pictures I've been posting recently of the bands, or you could reach out to me personally as Kalib Duarte on Facebook.
And breakfast is easy to find too. Balanced Breakfast, no vowels. So anybody who wants to find Balanced Breakfast online, we are. You can find us Balanced Breakfast, no vowels, everywhere. And when you're on Facebook, Facebook has a lot of features that we've been trying to figure out better. So we have the Balanced Breakfast page. We also have the Balanced Breakfast groups, and we have a group for each of the cities. And in trying to create more opportunities for people to gather, there was a request for a Balanced Breakfast group that could combine all of the cities. So if you search for Balanced Breakfast and you find a group called Balanced Breakfast, that's why, is that there's a desire to actually have conversations across cities and not just in one particular city. So yeah, hit me up. I'm in all the groups, and my social media is easy too. First name, last name, Stefan Aronsen.
And folks, if you want to join one of these, they have Zoom meetings, usually once a month in the city, and a couple other ones that if you have, some are themed, some are multi-city communities. Just join up on Facebook and hit up Stefan to join one of these first meetings, and you can be a fly on the wall, see how it all rolls, or jump in with both feet and share what you're working on, and interact with the group in a way that unblocks you if you're feeling blocked in these times.
Yeah, join us.
All right, I'm going to hit the audio here and see how this goes. And this is a track called Slow Burning Fuse. got steeples, corporations became people. Just like you and me. Oh, they've got to be free. But for how long? I don't know how much of the music came through on that. Give your comments down there, and I'll talk to Joe and Stefan and see what the balance is there. And thank you so much for supporting the show and being here this week. And we will talk to you next week. Bye-bye.